Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday Leading Change episode this week with our tag team, Lorna Mason and John Lawrence. Hi, y'all. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hey.
So Wednesday is about change. And of course, we as Scrum Masters are very often involved in those kinds of processes. So we want you guys to tell us a story of a change process that you were or are involved with and walk us through the story, like how it got started, what happened, and so on. And as you go through that story, please highlight for us the tools, the tips, the tricks, the techniques you learned back then that you still apply today.
So when I was a new Scrum Master, one of the things which I was very quickly brought into was Scaled Agile framework and understanding actually how we can apply this over a large organization. And I know there's lots of different techniques for scaling Scrum, and it's very much a case of picking the right one for your company and or your organization, but also understanding what's involved. So we're taking on the training on how to implement SAFe. Really, really good to get the understanding. And then we went live with it in my organization. And we had, I think it was about 12 or 13 Scrum teams working across engineering across a large scale platform. And we implemented it pretty much by the book, following all of the different steps and having the program increment plannings. And this was something which immediately jumped out at me. This is really beneficial to being able to make sure the teams can run and support each other, identify dependencies and blockers across the different team. And I took this on and I saw a lot of value from the way that it was running. And that was for our particular organization. Other organizations, it may not be as suitable. There might be Nexus or less and all the different other scales, or it might be that you don't need a scaling framework. But for us, it really jumped out at me. And probably in my naivety, I saw this as, well, this is brilliant. This fits everything. This will always work and this will be brilliant. And I went on to another organization where I thought, actually, I've got a number of teams here. We've got dependencies. What we need is we need to do SAFe, and we need to get some SAFe in place. And we need to scale. And I initially realized that probably not doing absolutely everything by the book was needed, but we definitely need a program increment. So we went into a program increment planning and we talked through all the different items. And I noticed that there were so many people sat there not engaged, not kind of talking. And I very quickly learned the lesson that although SAFe was right for where I was originally, in this new organization, it wasn't a fit because we weren't the right structure, we weren't the right size. And actually it meant that we didn't get as much value from it as I thought. And it was a lesson very quickly learned by myself that, again, that not only one principle doesn't necessarily fit another team the same way that it does for the first team, one principle doesn't fit a second organization way that it does a first organization. And very quickly led me to understand that actually always question the value of what we're doing, the understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it as well. So that was definitely a lesson very quickly learned for myself.
So as you think through this story and, if you could take some key lessons about how to tackle this. We've heard yesterday in the book recommendation from Lorna that you always should ask why. So that's a great place to start. Maybe I'll put that in as a tip. Ask why, question the value. But if you had to go through that story again, like what would you do differently from a change perspective?
I think if I went for it again, I would be looking at assessing the value, taking the value of kind of the program increment and understanding what's the inputs, what's the outputs, what's important about them, and are they really important to the teams? If they are, do we have to do it by the book? Not necessarily. There's ways that you can adapt it and apply more inspection and adaptation to the way that we're doing this. So if I went for it again, I would very much look at, okay, we want these outputs, but is there another way of achieving this? Can we do it with a smaller group? And actually what we ended up doing was we did then take it into a smaller group. We identified the key people who needs to be there and we let them be involved in that session. We then brought the team up to speed so that everyone's aware of what's going on. So we still have that as an output, and they could feed back, and we could still make adaptations to our plans. But we very much scaled it down to what's the right thing for us and the size of our organization. So it was adapting the process to what works for us. And for me, the biggest lesson was continuously always looking at inspection and adaptation and identifying the value and how we get there.
How about you, Lorna? What's your change story?
I think for me, it was coming into Insure, because obviously they were a startup initially, they're now a scale up, and it's watching that exponential growth and trying to keep the agile side of things on track, because you go from very small scale to just growth. So, working with John, and I think you've always going to have that relationship with engineering and projects and the business, as they call it, and almost like heads butting. And I think looking at the issue was, our engineering delivering, and people thinking they're not delivering fast enough. Well, actually, we were delivering, but was it transparent enough? Were we showing what we were delivering? So it was raising that transparency and showing that to the business. So were we demoing enough? Were we clear enough? Were we getting the right requirements through from product? So I think what John and I tried to do as a team when we started working together was try and build that relationship back up with product, to build that, well, it sounds really cheesy, but that golden triangle, because I think you really need that relationship to work strongly. So building that up, getting everyone engaged together, realizing that actually we needed that relationship with data as well, because they couldn't just be a handoff at the end of the chain. We needed data engaged as well, because there were requirements that we needed up front, not just at the end of the chain to make those reporting things work. Having projects engaged with us as well at startups. So, when you're a really small business, you can put things in Slack, and things like that. But actually, as you get bigger, you need these things put into Confluence, or you need them more formalized. So it's been a kind of a maturity journey, I think, for all of us that we've all been on together. And I think now, as we're sort of growing in our agile maturity, we've looked at how we can change the way we're working, our sort of processes. And we've looked at the teams, and we're looking more at feature teams, because that seems to be the way I think we can build better. Rather than doing things by services, we're looking at features. We've given the autonomy back to the teams. We've been doing event storming, example mapping. And I think the engineers have really thrived by actually working together and feeling like they have more autonomy rather than just being fed requirements from a product owner. Yeah, it's John. I don't know. You've been more involved at sort of the front line, so to speak.
It's a really good summary, and I think, as Lorna says here, what we've kind of taken it back to is what's the value in the process. So again, applying the kind of same kind of principle from the story which I mentioned, we both identified, and Lorna's point about the TED talk, constantly asking where's the value, why is the value, and how do we get it? And we've applied that to what we do. As Lorna mentions, we've ended up with a process where we're putting the power back into the team. But we saw that there was visibility was a key thing which we needed. Visibility of what engineering are doing, what the business are doing, and understanding. Having a vision there as well, and also having value. So in essence, 3 V's: the vision, the value, and the visibility. And this is what we've seen is really kind of fundamental to everything that we do in the way that we're interacting with the business. So we're using event storming as a new technique to our company. And for anyone who's not aware of event storming, it's a really good process which we're seeing. And it's engaging the business and the engineering teams directly. So being able to map out the events in a process and really get the understanding of both from the business, what's involved, but also from engineering. And one of the first bits of feedback we saw was we were talking through actually how do you get a quote? And from the business, it was, well, the customer enters their details, quotes generated, they buy their policy, and they get their documents. And then we started putting out the events from engineering that we've got these API calls, we've got these integrations. And suddenly the appreciation from the business was, okay, there's a lot involved in this process. So then when we started talking through a change, I had some feedback from a colleague on the business side who said, had we not gone through that process, I thought that change was probably a week's worth of work. The fact that you delivered it in 3 weeks, I was really amazed by, because I thought it would have taken 2 months to deliver. And by this event storm, we were actually able to create the vision on both sides and the visibility that actually there was appreciation of what's involved and also the quickness that we're able to deliver. As Lorna mentions, we're looking at kind of empowering the teams to really lead on how to do things, to the point where we're not necessarily running a full Scrum model, a full Kanban model, but we're running what is agile and breaking it down into very much, we need to inspect and adapt. We need retrospectives to be able to do that. We need to do it in the moment as well. We need to have vision, visibility, and we need to constantly challenge what's the value. So if someone says there's not value in doing this, well, why are we doing it? And example mapping is a really key thing, because we're all on our breaking down stories. So everyone jumps in rather than a BA typing in Jira, typing out the notes. Everyone's jumping in, everyone's collaborating, and it's a lot more visual. So everyone's got that visualization.
I think the most exciting thing from my perspective is that we've got all the experts in the right places doing the right things. So there's no assumption anywhere. When you're having those sessions, you've actually got driver support in there. You've got the sales team in there, so they can give you those answers at the right time. You haven't got a BA or a product owner assuming that they know the answer there and then. You've actually got the right person. And from an agile perspective, when you're looking at the values and everything else, it takes real courage to take the Scrum book and go, do you know what? This is a guide. We've taken the guide. We've kind of worked with it before. We've got years of experience, but actually we're going to try this because this is what we think works best. And this is how we're going to work it. But we're going to hold ourselves accountable, and we're still going to do the right thing, but we're going to tweak the rules because that's what we think is going to work.
We've got a brilliant team of Scrum Masters who are engaged, who are driving us forwards with us. And it's brilliant to work with like-minded people who want to see us kind of test out what we do differently to make us more successful. And in a way, some of it sounds like anti-patterns of Scrum, such as having the team talking with the business really kind of heavily, but the interruptions, there isn't the interruptions during the work, it's up front. So it's actually supporting the product owner by not expecting them to know all of the answers and then go back to the business and then come back to the team, which actually can be a long process, by actually just getting everyone in the same room and sharing that knowledge up front. But when it comes to actually developing the work, everyone understands, and the team aren't disturbed in the sense of what you're doing on this story, what you're doing here, because it's already known. Everyone understands what's going on it.
Yeah, kind of brings forward the idea that product ownership is actually a accountability, which is currently one of the words that is very often used in the Scrum Guide, rather than a person's role, right? And that's an important distinction. And I guess you guys, with the event storming example, I'll put the link to event storming in the show notes, by the way. With the event storming example, you gave a great illustration of what it would mean to have the product ownership as a shared accountability. It's a great story. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.